Hello and welcome to Mind Gourmet. My name is Nina Kaiser. I'm the co-founder of Mind Gourmet and as always, your host today. My today's guests are Dr. Ayesha and Dr. Dean Sherzai, award-winning neurologists, co-directors of the Alzheimer's Prevention Program at Loma Linda University Medical Center in California, and the authors of the groundbreaking book, this is mine, The Alzheimer's Solution, a breakthrough program to prevent and reverse the symptoms of cognitive decline at every age. Welcome, Ayesha and Dean. Thank you for sharing this time with me.
Thank you for having us,
Thank
Nina.
you so much.
It's a pleasure being here with you.
And it's an honor for me. And before we dive into our conversation, I'll introduce you a little more to our audience. A unique husband and wife team on the cutting edge of brain science, Dr. Dean and Dr. Ayesha Sherzai are dedicated to educating people on the simple steps to long-term health and wellness through their work as directors of the Alzheimer's Prevention Program at Loma Linda University Medical Center with patients, as well as through online writing, videos, and books. The Sherzais, through research and their extensive collective medical backgrounds, work to demystify the steps to achieving long-term brain health and the prevention of devastating diseases such as Alzheimer's and dementia. Dr. Dean trained in neurology at the Georgetown University School of Medicine and completed fellowships in neurodegenerative diseases and dementia at the National Institutes of Health and UC San Diego. He also holds a PhD in healthcare leadership with a focus on community health from Andrews University. Dr. Ayesha leads the lifestyle program for the prevention of neurological diseases. She completed a dual training in preventative medicine and neurology at Loma Linda University and a fellowship in vascular neurology and epidemiology at Columbia University. She's also trained plant-based culinary artist. The Sherzais have raised two Mensa kids, Alex and Sophie, who are in college at age 12 and 10 through empowering individualized brain development programs. They live in or around Los Angeles, California. Am I right?
Yes,
exactly. Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
So I'm so happy to have you here because my work is so much about the mind, connected with body and soul and our whole being. And I'm just so sure that an inspired, creative, focused, and clear mind needs a healthy brain. Yeah. It's that simple, and yet, I mean, how do you do that? So one of the big questions is how can we keep our brains and our whole beings healthy and thriving so that we can enjoy life to the most here and now, and avoiding by being surprised by the symptoms of terrifying and devastating diseases like Alzheimer's in the future. Mm-hmm. So I was very relieved to find out about you and your book, The Alzheimer's Solution. And it's the first book about the only scientifically proven solution to the international epidemic, and I really think it's an epidemic of Alzheimer's disease. Mm-hmm. And to read that in 2016, Alzheimer's disease was the 6th leading cause of death in the United States, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Terrifying. The more relieving for me it is to read that 90% of Alzheimer's can actually be prevented. So can you give us an overview of what Alzheimer's disease actually is and the biological processes and risk factors that are responsible for most of the degeneration that contributes to Alzheimer's and other dementias?
So let me give you a little heads up on our background on this epidemic. It's actually larger than number 6. And in the United States, it's underdiagnosed. And the latest data shows that it's probably number 3 leading cause of mortality and morbidity. In UK and Japan, it's number 1. And most of the European countries that are aging a little faster than the rest of the world, actually it's in the number 1, number 2 range. Wow. But it's much more devastating than that. The numbers are scary. In US, every 66 seconds, somebody's being diagnosed with Alzheimer's. That, again, is an understatement because in a lot of populations, they're not being diagnosed yet. 5.6 million in US right now. Worldwide, the number is expected to go to 130 million by 2050. The cost of Alzheimer's in US alone the second leading cost disease in US is heart disease at 100 billion. Third leading cost, most expensive disease is all of cancers combined, about 60 billion. Direct cost of Alzheimer's right now is 259 billion. Another cost of 240 billion indirectly. That means people losing jobs, all that stuff. That number is expected to climb to anywhere near 3 trillion in US and 20 trillion worldwide by 2050.
Whoa.
So if anybody thought any other disease would be of worry, Alzheimer's by itself will collapse our system. So we have to do something about it. And the approach has been molecular. And we have no problem with molecular research. I was in the experimental therapeutics at NIH. We did the molecular stuff, focusing on amyloid and tau and all these molecules, and that's important. But what happens, as in everything, research, politics, everything becomes myopic, simplified, because simplicity is comfort. Comfort is bad. When it comes to diseases like this, you have to have complex approaches. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to lifestyle, people ignored it over and over and over again. And even a couple of years ago, when we told Alzheimer's Association and other organizations that lifestyle matters and it makes a difference, we were actually shunned. And this is two scientists mm-hmm. in the healthiest place in the world, in Loma Linda, looking at the population, giving the data, at least put some budget in this. Well, now, 2018, things have turned around. We just came from Alzheimer's International Conference, and the centerpiece was lifestyle.
Yeah.
Alzheimer's Association is putting millions into lifestyle. And all this focus. Well, we're okay. It's not our ego. We were right. It's not the gimmick. It's not the holes in the brain, or it's not the vitamin concoction. It is the more complex approach, which is lifestyle and multi-dimensional approach. Why? Because Alzheimer's is not a disease in the way that people want to make it as a molecular, singular disease. It's a long-term, multi-dimensional disease. And what we have found is that there are 4 components that have the greatest influence on this.
Yeah.
The 4 components are oxidation, mm-hmm. inflammation, glucose dysregulation, and lipid dysregulation. Mm-hmm. And they're not separate. They're interconnected, but some people come to it from insulin resistance and glucose dysregulation. And we just wrote a research paper, nationwide paper on that you don't even have to have diabetes to be at higher risk of dementia. Even insulin resistance or even pre-diabetes puts you at much higher risk. Others come from lipid side or fats or saturated fats. And all this argument, keto, these are all gimmicks of the day. And one-off paper. Lipids also have a significant influence on a different pathway. Inflammation has its own pathways. And if we understand this, then we say, okay, so how can we affect glucose dysregulation? Wait a second, food, exercise, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. How can we affect a lipid dysregulation? Wait, food, exercise, all these things. How do you affect inflammation? Wait a second, food. So what's funny is that we are so glad that our publishers were patient enough with us not to ask for the gimmick, because that's what publisher want. But Harper and Simon Schuster were understanding of the complexity, and we didn't give them any gimmicks. We said it is the more complex approach, and it will make a humongous difference if we approach this in the communities and in households and families.
And couldn't we really say that there's a paradigm shift, especially after you describing what you saw at this big conference? That
Definitely.
finally, people.
Yeah, definitely. I think people have started to realize the complexity of the issue. And, we have evidence, Pfizer, which is one of the, biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world, was leading the research behind finding treatments for Alzheimer's disease. And recently they completely stopped. They stopped and they said that they don't have any future plans of looking at treatment models because of their specific approach. So I think people are understanding. And when we were at the conference last week at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference, at the plenary session where everybody gets together at the plenary session, the first talk was about lifestyle and about the importance of lifestyle. And we were thrilled because, we've been saying this all along. The topic essentially was that treatment is now prevention, and that it's multiple elements. So we have to address this in a multifaceted way.
And it was wonderful to see that they spoke against gimmicks, the vitamin of the day, the superfood of the day. It's a lifestyle when it comes to food in general, when it comes to exercise in general, all that. And they showed those 5 elements that we usually highlight. They actually, it was incredible for us to see on those elements were the ones that were highlighted, which we will talk about as we go forward.
Yeah, I'm really having goosebumps as you speak. And I think changing lifestyle often feels so uncomfortable, but at least it's my point of view, that's what I have in my hands. I can do something on my own. I can take responsibility for my life. And this is why I think it's so beautiful. It takes us out from victimhood and actually puts us square into the driver's seat of our lives. Yeah. And I find it so empowering to have a plan for what can we do, especially because reading your book, I realized that, I'm now 45, and it's not something you think about when you're 80 something.
Yeah.
So,
when we give talks, somebody in the audience usually asks, how do I know if I have symptoms of Alzheimer's? And we say, you do have Alzheimer's. You already have Alzheimer's, and your neighbor has Alzheimer's, and the other one. What we mean by that is that it's not a point where you develop Alzheimer's. It's a process of living and cumulative damage. And then other things that you beautifully said, which is empowering, that's in your hand, cumulative rehabilitation, cumulative regeneration, that's in your hand. So what happens as we get older, there's some vascular assaults. There's, anything from radiation to just general aging where you lose some hearing and so on and so forth. But the other things that you have to counter that, they're all in your hand, which is the food you eat. Today, the kids had a session on just simply, here's a good breakfast and here's a bad breakfast. But that's not just a simple matter, because one has sugar and lots of fat. And then you send kids to school, especially boys, hunter-gatherers, to sit in a class of 35 people and stay calm. And then if they don't, you give them a diagnosis. And then you give them a pill, and then you give another pill for the side effect of the pill. Well, how about not giving them sugar at 8 in the morning or 7 in the morning, and not the caffeinated drink or the fatty food that actually clogs up the arteries, and some sleep, and then you don't give the diagnosis, or at least less of the diagnosis. Same thing with all of us. If we do the good things, and this sugar, which has been massive, I mean, it's so addictive and it's so prevalent now that there was a time that you could barely get, you couldn't get refined sugar, but if you did, it was extremely rare. Now it's in 70% of foods that are packaged.
Yeah.
70%.
It's incredible. Yeah. Especially if you're a label reader like I, and you realize that it's almost impossible to buy something that is packaged that has no sugar. So exactly. If somebody comes to you, personally, into your medical practice, how do you approach their problem regarding Alzheimer's that might have started already, or they see some factors that they start to be worried about?
Well, we have an established system in the clinic where we have a number of, tests, depending on the person and the stage that they're in. And we see the entire spectrum, from subjective cognitive impairment, or very young individuals coming in for quote unquote brain fog, to frank Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementias. And our approach is usually at the very beginning, understanding where they are, their risk factors. And we use a scientifically based, evidence-based model of configuring their risk factors, taking a look at their modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors and moving forward. So it's a combination of diagnostic techniques from blood tests, neuroimaging, neuropsychological testing, and a very good history looking at their lifestyle risk factors, including nutrition, exercise, stress management, their restorative sleep, and identifying sleep problems, and how much are they challenging their minds, their cognitive activities. And then moving forward, judging from all of this information, coming up with a specific diagnosis. And we have lifestyle intervention programs where we apply this very method of a very comprehensive approach. But the interesting thing is, it's not a cookie cutter approach. It's not us telling others to do, specific things. We want to know what their resources are, what their limitations and strengths are, and then based on their environment and their resources, we tailor a program for them, because we always say, they never got there overnight, they will never get out of it overnight. So, judging and seeing what works for them and having an established communication and contact with them on a regular basis is one of the most important elements. So personalized medicine and in an intensive contact way.
And you heard Ayesha say we almost always invariably have a partner.
Yes.
Be it the wife, the husband, the partner, because the lowest denominator of behavior change, if there's more than one person in the house, is that more than one person. This one person can't eat butter and bacon and sit around all day, and the other person is not going to be affected. Yeah. They are going to be affected. In fact, data shows that partners of those who have dementia have a 600% greater risk than age-matched populations of also developing dementia.
Yeah.
So obviously that's not genetics.
Yeah, which speaks so much about the importance of lifestyle. After a while, if you live with someone, you have the same sleeping patterns.
Correct.
You have the same exercise patterns. You have the same eating patterns. So
you start looking the same. I'm so sorry, Ayesha, but she's devolving towards me.
I'm glad I look like him.
No, it's a little different, but it's incredible shared risks.
Yeah.
And so when we bring people into the clinic, we bring both, or sometimes actually the whole family. One time I had 14 people, including grandchildren in the room, because it's an opportunity to teach empathy. Yeah. Empathy is not lectured, it's thought, it's lived. And also it's an opportunity to actually vertically teach lifestyle. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you teach high school kids about the importance of food and meditation and mindfulness, I mean, we do everything else, but we don't connect people to their calm centers and focus. Are you kidding me? So they grow up all angry, and then they develop these dysfunctional habits. So we do that. We bring the lowest, the denominator of the family into this conversation, including getting history. Because a lot of times the person themselves are not aware, but the family members are quite aware. Mm-hmm. So we get that data from them. And then when we put a plan in place, it's actually not the plan for just that one person.
Yeah.
It's for the family. And it's incredible that you come back and it's a family member that thought they had never had problem. They come back and say, oh, I feel so much sharper now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's the best form of public health for us. It's so satisfying. The whole concept of addressing this at the family level and at the community level, we always tell our patients that health does not start in the clinic or in the hospital. That's sick there. Health actually starts at your home, in your kitchen, at your work, and in your community. And if you take that message there, you've completely changed the landscape of health for
the
everyone.
Paradigm. Absolutely. We would love the conversation to be altered from one of clinic to work.
Yeah.
I would love to go and create mind-centered, brain-centered, health-centered work environments.
Yeah.
Same thing with community. We are actually leading the only community-based brain initiative throughout the country in beach cities, which is Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, and Hermosa Beach, where the entire community, including the children, are involved in this brain healthy living. And we're collecting data as well, which is a remarkable thing that's happening. And more and more people are becoming aware of what you said beautifully, which is empowerment and the fact that it's in their hand.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good
Yes, and we often tend to think that a disease like Alzheimer's is something for old people, but I've actually always thought it, but reading what you write, I've been thinking, hey, if every child learns that from the beginning, it basically doesn't have to learn to avoid a disease because they just know how to live. And that brings me to your neuroplan, which is so beautiful and it makes so much sense to me. And I'd love to see those things in schools, honestly. That says my soul as an ex-elementary teacher.
Yes, yes.
So can you walk us through those pillars? And they show so clearly what we can do to have healthy brains and lives, and so that those frightening medical issues are at least most probably not becoming a reality for us. And since you, Ayesha, you are a chef. And by the way, I cooked your zucchini lentil dish for dinner. I loved it.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you for sharing. It always makes me very, very happy when people, make some of the recipes. Thank you. Yes, I think I'm a chef at heart. So, the neuro that you just mentioned stands for nutrition, exercise, unwind, or stress management. R is for restorative sleep, and O is for optimizing cognitive activity. And these are the factors that over and over again for decades and decades have shown that if people comply, they can reduce 90% of their risk for Alzheimer's disease and so many other diseases as well. If you start taking care of the brain and the mind, you've taken care of the rest of the body, because that's where our emotions reside. That's where our personality resides. You can replace any other organ, but the minute you replace the brain, you replace the person.
Yes.
So it's critical to address these elements. And as far as data is concerned for nutrition, a whole food plant-based diet, which essentially means an unprocessed diet that is high in plant foods, nuts and seeds and vegetables and fruits and whole grains, is the best source of energy. And it gives the building blocks for the brains, all the anti-inflammatory compounds. And there's data from so many different population studies and so many clinical trials as well, and our own research as well. Let's say, for example, 3 things are important in nutrition. Sugar is really bad, and we've known this for a while. So we're talking about simple, table sugar, and the sugar that is available in juices and in baked goods. We were never designed for so much sugar in our food, and unfortunately here in the US, I'm not sure how it is in Germany, everything is just slammed with sugar. And once we cut that down, it reduces inflammation in the brain. The second thing is saturated fats. Fats that are derived from red meat or from chicken and from cheeses, from animal-derived fats. They tend to cause inflammation and oxidative damage to brain cells, their connections, and the blood vessels as well. On the contrary, fats that are derived from plants, polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats, seem to be very healthy, and including that in our diet is absolutely important. So not all fat is bad, it's the type of fat that matters, and plant fats are great.
And there's an exception to that. There are a couple of plants that actually have high saturated fat.
Correct. So coconut oil and palm oil are very high in saturated fats. It's the few plant sources of fat that are more than 90% saturated. So, and recently a paper came out from Harvard University that it was a consensus between multiple journalists and scientists coming to a conclusion to say that one should be very careful about the use of coconut oil because of its high content of saturated fats. And the third thing about nutrition is essentially, low calorie foods. Michael Pollan is an author of a book, and he always says, eat food, not too much, mostly plants, which is beautiful. I think it encompasses everything that is true about nutrition. So low calorie foods is also very, very important. So that was nutrition. And as far as exercise is concerned?
Yeah, exercise, a couple of things. Of the 5 elements neuro, 3 of them are for creating a perfect environment for growth, because the brain will do its own job. This little 3-pound organ is 2% of body's weight, but consumes 25% of body's energy. So there lies the problem, but there also lies the solution, because of these 87 billion neurons, roughly, plus or minus, can make as many as 1 quadrillion connections. Those connections are protection. And if you give the brain the right environment, it will actually continually grow throughout life. We're talking 90s and above, centenarians even. So food, sleep, meditation, stress management actually creates the environment for growth. Exercise and mental activity actually create the growth, meaning the connections. Now, each neuron can make a couple of connections, but as many as 30,000 connections. When you create an environment where the brain creates 30,000 connections per neuron, you're protected against anything. So that's where exercise comes in. Exercise has been found to be profound in many studies, as much as 40 to 48% reduction in risk of Alzheimer's just from exercise. We're talking about there are 3 parts to exercise, 3 legs as we call it, pardon the pun. One of them is you have to do a little more aerobic exercise than we thought. So when patients come to us and say, oh, I walked the neighborhood, I say, that's fantastic, but that's meditation. That's not exercise. Yeah. So you have to get tired, and 25 to 30 minutes, 4 to 5 times a week. That's the minimum. I mean, but you have to work your way up. One of the things about us, the part that we pride ourselves is the behavior and the habit part. Behavior and habit must be in increments and small increments of success, not in binary New Year resolution kind of, I'm going to do the marathon. No. So small increments. But you work your way towards 25 to 30 minutes, even if it takes you 6 months or longer, 4 to 5 times a week. The second leg of exercise is walk throughout the day, move throughout the day. So people who did half an hour of exercise every day, but then the rest of the time they just sat around, it negated the benefit. So get up, walk, stretch, stand up desk, whatever it needs to, do that. The third one is a surprising one, which is leg strength is correlated with brain health.
Really?
So, yes. Yeah. So initially we were incredulous. We thought there was, in research, they say there's a reverse causation where maybe people were healthier, so therefore their legs were bigger. No, but even when you look at the directionality, it's actually leg strength. So I tell people, when you do that, getting up and walking around, do a little mini squats and, get the legs strong as well. So those 3 things so far. As scientists, we're okay with the statement, to the best of our knowledge today.
Yes.
I think what's killing us in today's society is this need for absolute certainty. Yeah. No, science's humility is in the fact that we're okay with saying to the best of our knowledge today, and as data changes, that's fine. We are moving forward. And that's worked for us. We have rockets at 40,000 miles an hour and planes that fly 500 people at a time with that, to the best of our knowledge. So exercise is critical for growing the brain. In fact, after the age of 30 or so, you start losing brain volume, actually earlier than that. But people that exercise, that increase their exercise, even in their 50s and 60s, they grew their hippocampus by 2% per year. That's the area that's specialized for memory. So that should prompt people, everybody in your audience should, I think after this, they're going to get up on their bike and start biking. And it's important. So that's exercise. And the third is, I think, one of the most important for us, which is unwind, which stands for managing stress. Yes. Not just getting rid of stress, but managing, because the second part of stress is good stress. Mm-hmm. And good stress is critical for brain growth.
There's a lot of misunderstanding about stress. When we say stress, people think just getting rid of every activity and just lying in a hammock on the beach and not doing anything.
Which is good for a couple of days.
Maybe for a few days. It's good. I think we all need it. Maybe you and I need it.
We need it.
Yeah, very soon. But the importance of perceiving your stress levels and identifying and differentiating between good and bad stress is at the core. Having that capacity to know what is good stress and what is bad stress, eliminating the bad stress and maximizing the good stress. And we'll talk about it because it's linked with the optimized section of the neuroplan. Mm-hmm. Good stress is that challenge and the complexity that pushes the brain to grow, to make those connections that Dean was just talking about.
Yeah.
Good stress is the type of stress that is your own, that is a project. What you're doing right now, Nina, contacting us and contacting people to get connected with them all over the world and, you know, really push this concept of Mind Gourmet, this mindful living. You're actually taking on this good stress, and you know, we're doing the same thing. You know, we are passionate about brain
Yes.
health in the community and public health. So we've maximized it at the cost of losing some sleep and at the cost of, you know, not sometimes resting well. So it's critical to maximize that good stress.
Yeah, that purpose-driven stress, and it is stress.
Yeah.
Let's not fake it and lie that it's not. We can call it another name like tension, but it is that tension that is driven by you. This is not an easy job you're doing. Calling people, setting it up, making sure they're on time, getting the the camera right, the sound right.
Writing all the questions.
Yeah, that's not just lying down on the beach.
Yeah.
But that's actually, ironically, and we'll get to the optimized. I'll say more about it in the optimized. Ironically, that is the most profound protection for the brain. As much as we would like to say nutrition, because that's our field and our interest, and as much as exercise, but mental activity, challenging, positive stress, mental activity is the most protective factor. And we'll talk about it when we get to optimize. The fourth one is sleep.
Oh, yes.
So sleep is critical. The most important parts of your day is nighttime sleep. That's ironic to say that because you're knocked out, but you're not knocked out. In fact, the brain works whereas everything else sleeps. The brain would not have sacrificed, evolution would not have sacrificed our safety if sleep wasn't so important. 8 hours, 1/3 of your day, you're out, so the bears can come and maul you and the saber-tooth can nibble on their little snack. Because that 8 hours is critical, 7 to 8 hours is critical. Why? Because it has two critical functions. One is consolidating memories and thoughts and organizing the brain. And it's incredible when it comes to that. And test after test have shown that even 1 hour of less sleep for kids can significantly affect their cognitive function. So we do all these other things like vitamin concoctions and all these for our kids, yet not create a sleep program that truly allows them to consolidate memory and for their brain. Sleep. The second important part of sleep is even more important. It's the major detoxification period for the brain. So when we were in Beverly Hills, in charge of in Cedar-Sinai, part of a Hollywood crowd and all beautiful people, good people, but we got a lot of people saying detox this, detox that, from every body part. And I would say, well, sorry, but there are only two kinds of detox that we know of, unless there's a poison and you detox that way. But naturally, there are two types. One is water. We need a lot of water. Mm-hmm. We need at least 8 glasses. I mean, that number can go up and down, but we need water because as we get older, the water content of our body goes down, and that has consequences as far as metabolism, as far as body function. The second one is extremely important: sleep. When you sleep well, you get your levels of inflammatory markers, oxidative factors, as well as things like amyloid, which is the bad protein that accumulates in Alzheimer's. They all go down with good sleep. But one bad night's sleep, and they all go sky high, including cortisol and everything else. So sleep, you want a spa? Build a good sleep place for yourself. Yeah. Build a good sleep hygiene. We just took out another thing that that's a gimmick. Sleep is the ultimate spa. Good sleep, or we call it restorative sleep. And we call it restorative sleep because getting people knocked out is not the aim. I can knock anybody out with the right medicines. But just because somebody's knocked out doesn't mean they're going through the cycles of the phases of sleep.
Yes.
And those are critical.
Yeah.
Those are critical for memory consolidation and for detoxification. So that's where sleep comes in. And there's so much you can do to actually get a really good sleep spa.
Mm-hmm. So how, if I can ask,
yes,
how do I know if my sleep is restorative? Just by knowing how I wake up in the morning?
That's one element. Yeah. The second element is if you are having some memory issues, if you are feeling a decline, And if you're not just tired, it would not be a bad idea to get a sleep evaluation, because a lot of times, yes, if you have sleep apnea, let's say, you will be tired during the day, even if you've got 9 hours sleep. But sometimes people get so used to this pattern and then revving themselves up with coffee in the morning so that they don't see the fact that their body actually is not getting restful sleep. So if you have even minimal doubts or some declines in your body health, definitely follow up with sleep evaluation. And that doesn't always mean that you are going to wear a mask or something. It could mean sleep hygiene and some other techniques.
As a matter of fact, sleep evaluation is one of the most important things we do for our patients, regardless of them coming in with complaints of snoring or any other sleep-related symptoms. The fact that they feel tired and they're not sharp could potentially be because of a sleep disorder. So we get that out of the way.
Absolutely. The last one, the most important, is optimizing mental activity.
Oh, yes.
Now, that's the good stress. Optimizing mental activity has 3 arms. One is challenge, complexity. So although every time I give a talk, I pick on Sudoku and these kind of things. Those are good. Don't get me wrong, those are fine. But complex real life activities are much more helpful. When you play a new musical instrument or a new song, if you are already a musician, or you learn a new dance, or you learn you're writing a book, or you're leading a project, or you're volunteering, or any of these, that's not just adding some numbers to 9 or something. It's more complex than that. Let's take musical instrument. When you're playing a musical instrument, you're reading notes. That's your language center, your left parietal. You're processing it. That's your frontal lobe. You're looking at it visually and then processing visually. That's occipital lobe. You're being creative with it. It's your right parietal lobe. You're emotionally involved in it. That's your limbic system. That's not Sudoku. That's the entire brain. That's complexity. Now, the second arm is challenge. Sometimes complex behaviors become repetitive, and then they don't serve the same purpose. If they're complex, that's great, but only you know what's the next level of challenge. So now you've started this podcast and you have thousands and thousands of followers. The next level, I'm not trying to give you project management, but the next level may be, how do I expand to South Africa and Australia and so on? Yes. That's challenge. So challenge is always moving it to the next level that pushes your brain. It's almost stretching those neurons to make those connections. And the third element is the most important element, not just in optimize, but in neuro, which is purpose.
Yeah.
Purpose is at the center of everything. Whatever complex activity you're undertaking, if it's given to you by somebody else, by a doctor, by somebody, after a while it becomes painful because it wasn't yours.
Yes.
If it's your purpose, it serves your joy, your bliss, your purpose, then it's more likely to be continuous, that might more likely to be challenging, and you are more likely to push it to the next level. So purpose seems to be at the center of neuro.
Right.
Yeah, because purpose gives us a reason for what we do, and it motivates to grow out of our comfort zones. At least that's the thing for me. And it's beautiful to think really in terms of this is good stress. Because sometimes it's a little hard to differentiate, between when is it vision driven and when are you working your butt off and you don't actually know if it leads anywhere. But nevertheless, as you say, if you connect to your heart and you feel inside your purpose, most times, at least I believe, we know.
Yeah.
So there's something else in this case, in connection with the neuroplan, that I wanted to ask you, and that is, implementing change often brings so much resistance with it. You know what you want to do, you maybe even make a plan, you go for it, and then after the 3rd, 4th days, it feels like everything inside you just says, oh no, I'm doing this tomorrow, maybe this is not working, I can do it anyway. And I feel like this is one of the biggest challenges in anything that we want to do in our lives, to navigate around. So when you have your patients and the people you talk with, how do you help them understand the phenomenon of change and to be successful in those things they actually desire for themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's the most important element of brain health, is establishing healthy habits. I think there's several elements that contribute to that failure. The first and probably the most common is unconventional expectations or high expectations, and not really looking at, what is achievable for you
Smart.
and what you can do. So, the concept of SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And applying that business management concept in health too actually helps quite a bit. And the idea that you have to give yourself a lot of time for a particular habit to be owned by you. There are actually specific pathways in the brain that are created in the basal ganglia of habits, and those take weeks to months. And so picking up a very small action or activity and continuously doing that over and over again until it becomes a part and parcel of your life, and then moving on to the next step, is key. And as far as motivation is concerned, when it comes to brain health and cognitive impairment specifically, people are motivated because this is the brain we're talking about. This is their memories. This is their personality, everything. And so it's a very serious topic. And for 30% of loss of taste or maybe some pleasure, you don't want to compromise the brain at all. And lastly, we want to make sure that in our program, specifically, I talk about my program, our program, is we don't want to people to feel deprived. Say, for example, for nutrition, a lot of times the notion is that if you have to live healthy, you have to give up everything that is delicious and a part of your culture and tradition and your history and your memories. That's not true. So with a little bit of planning, and planning is at the core, and establishing the knowledge of what you can do and what you cannot do, and moving forward incrementally, which is different for every individual, is very important.
Yeah. The concept of motivation is a particular interest to us.
Yeah.
I hate the word motivation because it's such a demotivating word. It's the word we hear everywhere, yet nobody knows what it is. And even in our own family, our kids, one of my daughters my daughter came and said, Dad, I'm not motivated. And I said, and she's well achieved, and for a 10-year-old, and I said, there is no such thing as motivation. Motivation is as a mechanism as this. When you create small incremental successes towards a goal, towards a purpose, and those successes accumulate enough times where the brain, the limbic system, then passively labels it emotionally, because the emotional label that the brain puts on things it's as simple as that, make it motivational or non-motivational. That's why how we have failed kids in school. We just throw them into something without creating a pattern of success. I don't mean just give them things. No, that's actually, there has to be a little tension that leads to success. But without any tension, people being given prizes, no, that doesn't work either. But a system of series of successes that are achieved after a little bit of a loss, a little bit of a tension, but that's continued over weeks, then the brain fills it with an emotion. I like it. I want to do more of it. I like the sense of accomplishment. Not in those terms, but the brain tacitly creates that language. Guess what happened? That's actually a mechanism of motivation. So let's take one thing, for example, food. Healthcare system is not designed to teach people a lifestyle. We don't have enough time. So in a rare occasion, a doctor at the door says, oh, by the way, eat healthy. And that's it. What does that even mean? You just failed the person. What needs to happen is we do a questionnaire. We find out what their current lifestyle is, what their challenges are, because you can't do a cookie cutter. Everybody does this and this, and what their opportunities are, whether it's sugar or it's saturated fat. But even not saturated fat. Within saturated fat, is it cheese or is it meat or is it high fat dairy or what is it? And then within those, which one is the one that's most likely to succeed? We stick to that. So let's say it's sugar. We already have a quantification from them. Oh, right now on the average, when we measured the boxed foods and everything else, on the average, I'm taking in about 20 tablespoons of sugar a day. No, not me. Let's say somebody. I'm
I know, but I mean, that's much.
That's not much.
Yeah.
Do you know that a can of Coke, or I shouldn't care, it's soda, one can have as many as 13 teaspoons of sugar?
Oh yeah, easily.
13 to 15 teaspoons?
Yeah, true.
Not in today's environment. Now take all those cereals and other foods. 20 teaspoons or tablespoons is not too much. So let's say that's the case. Now we have a quantity. Now let's apply SMART goals to just that, nothing else. You didn't come to bad health overnight, and I'm not going to get you out of it overnight. We're going to do a 6-month, a year plan. So here are your sources of sugar. For the next 6 weeks, you're going to reduce it by half and not change anything else. Sugar is hard enough to give up, so I'm not going to add more complexity. And then once after 6 weeks, after going some withdrawal, some difficulty, don't feel good, I feel a little dizzy, I feel lightheaded, all that stuff. Maybe I'm hypoglycemic. How often have we? Not all of you are hypoglycemic. And then all of a sudden you say, okay, now I don't miss it. For some people it's 6 weeks. For some people it's 3 months.
Yeah.
Once you get that level, that success, that person feels like, oh my gosh, I just climbed the Everest. Now they will be ready for the next thing. They will be, okay, now I'm going to actually take on butter. Or I'm going to take on 5 minutes of meditation and mindfulness. And then that becomes a self-fulfilling thing, because now the brain has learned and has put in the emotional, motivational words, I can do it, I like it, I want to do more of it. But if throw everything at them, you failed them. It's the New Year resolution. How many of us have done any of our New Year resolutions? None of us.
Right.
So it's got to be small incremental successes that are designed around your habits, your successes, and your potentials. That's basically it.
Yeah, and this is very, very empowering and also encouraging. And there's one point in your book that I like very much and that I would like to read. That is, you say, in our years of research and clinical work, perhaps the most profound thing we've realized is this: the pursuit of cognitive health is about so much more than just avoiding Alzheimer's. Yeah. Getting old doesn't have to be about mental decline. The brain can actually expand as we get older, giving us the capacity to see the world more complexly, to truly understand ourselves and the people around me. And that's, I would, if I can say that, just almost say that's a recipe to thrive.
Yes.
At any age. And so thank you for doing this work. I mean, I'm not a medical person, but I feel very, very grateful. And only preparing for this conversation has already given me so much insight and so much new possibility to look at my life and my habits, that really I would like to thank you from my heart. And I would like to ask you, as before we close, so if our listeners would like to know more about you, would like to connect with you, would like to learn from you, and also would like to know more about their own health and especially brain health, what can they do and where can they go?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Nina.
Absolutely.
It's the conversations like this that gives us a lot of energy. So
motivation.
We're very motivated and empowered right now. We really appreciate it, and we're connected. We're from the same tribe. You're doing such an amazing job, and we're very fortunate to have connected with you. For the audience, if they want to connect with us, we're very active on social media and on our website. Our website is teamsherzai.com, and we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Team Sherzai. And we would be happy to connect with anyone if they have any particular questions or if they want to have a conversation. And
you do also have a brain health assessment, right?
Yes.
Yes, we have a brain health assessment on our website that is based on evidence, and it calculates modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors, and it actually provides a vector for people to understand where they are and where they need to be for better brain health. And also their personalized lifestyle scores when it comes to nutrition, exercise, stress, and everything else, and they can follow it and adjust it according to the advice given. Yes.
Yeah, it's very, very good and very helpful. And now for everyone who is watching and listening, you'll find all important information about Ayesha and Dean, their work and their book below this interview. And before I close, Ayesha and Dean, is there anything else I overlooked? Is there anything else that needs to be said right now and right here?
Just thank you. We love to be connected with like-minded people who are trying to make a difference in this world.
We're grateful. Thank you for having us.
Well, I am very grateful. Thank you for sharing this time and space with me and everybody who's watching and listening. And so, bye everybody. And remember always to take the driver's seat of the car called your life and create this lifetime to your taste. It's our pleasure here at Mind Gourmet to support you with our food for thought. Bye everyone.
Thank you. Bye.